and welcome to Open, the show opening the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Brittany Skyler, covering for Darren Jaime, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough and New York City. Coming up, we'll learn about one charter school network's success and how a bold decision to ban cell phones long before it became state policy is part of that story. After that, we'll talk about the new research linking inflammation to heart attack risk and how anti-inflammatory treatments could help protect your heart. Then we'll sit down with a seasoned public safety expert who will shed light on the vital role connectivity plays during emergencies and what one telecommunications company is doing to support those on the front lines. Finally, we'll discuss the crackdown on bicyclists and e-bike riders who aren't obeying traffic laws, the effect of the new criminal summonses, and what riders need to know going forward. So stay tuned. All this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hey everyone, I'm Brittany Skyler and you're now watching Open, a live program bringing the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. Some things have been going on throughout this past week. Let's take you through it with some Bronx updates. We start off with federal news. A federal court has blocked President Trump's emergency tariffs, which is a major blow to one of his key economic strategies. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruled President Trump overstepped his authority by imposing sweeping tariffs under emergency powers. The decision could pause his ability to use tariffs to pressure foreign nations unless Congress steps in. The White House says the trade deficit is a national emergency and plans to appeal. For now, it's unclear whether any of the current tariffs will be lifted. While tariffs aimed at national security like those on steel and autos still stand, the court said President Trump can't use emergency powers to control imports by tariff. In health news, child-targeted cereals are declining in nutritional value with increased sugar, fat, and salt levels and decreased protein and fiber compared to 13 years ago, according to a recent study. This research highlights many children's cereals are calorie-dense but nutritionally poor. Dr. Stephen Cook of Nationwide Children's Hospital suggests parents need to enforce healthy breakfast options, resisting children's pleas for less nutritious choices. He also advises against sugar snacks throughout the day as they disrupt appetite and promote unhealthy habits. Furthermore, nutritionists recommend avoiding processed foods and beverages with excessive sugar, caffeine, and artificial additives, suggesting simpler ingredient lists are preferable. In transportation news, the Department of Motor Vehicles are warning all New Yorker drivers about scam texts demanding payment for fake fines and threatening to suspend your license. Officials say it's a phishing scam trying to steal your personal information. The DMV says it never asks for personal details through text. Look out for red flags like misspelled words, odd links, or texts from international numbers. If you get one, don't click anything, just delete it. You can also report it directly to the DMV. In other news, solo travelers may be paying more for airline tickets and not just for group tours. A recent investigation found that Delta, United, and American Airlines were charging higher fares for solo flyers on certain domestic routes. In some cases, one ticket cost significantly more than the same flight when booked for two people. For example, the amount for a flyer traveling solo was $206. This decreased to $154 when two passengers were traveling together. After the report, at least two airlines quietly rolled back the pricing, but none have explained the discrepancy. Experts say the practice is rare, but not isolated, with differences showing up mostly on one-way domestic routes. Some fare rules even mention a requirement to be accompanied by another adult. Critics call the practice deceptive, warning it could trigger calls for government regulation. That's all for our Bronx updates. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open when we return. Welcome back. Across New York City, one charter school network is standing out for its commitment to academic excellence, innovation, and student success. 5 of its high schools were recently ranked among the top 25 in the state. Its graduation and attendance rates consistently surpass city and state averages, and its students are earning college credits, workforce credentials, and even recognition for civic engagement before they finish high school. Joining us now is the CEO of United Charter High Schools, Dr. Curtis Palmore. Doctor, thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you so much. It's really good to be here.
So, I mean, we just mentioned that in the intro, all of the great things that your students are doing all throughout all the schools, which I think is so amazing and so exceptional when you see these young adults are able to leave out of high school with so much more than a high school diploma. They're ready for the workforce. So let's talk a little bit about the fact that it's enrollment season.
It is.
So what would you say to a family that's still deciding on a high school?
Well, I think the high school admission process is very similar to what we probably had in our experiences in applying to colleges. It's very competitive. There's so many different options. We offer 7 amazing high school options, small school environments with anywhere from 200 to 400 students with a rigorous college-focused career readiness approach. And what that means is that our students have an opportunity to have rigorous academics across their core subject areas. They also have an opportunity to engage in civic engagement and projects throughout their experiences. And then we also take a very targeted approach on ensuring that our students are ready for their next stage in life. So what that means is that we have a college and career focus, ensuring that our students across our schools, that's right now about 80% of our students are taking advanced courses and or college credit courses to prepare them for the next stage. And we're doing a great job. Right now, about 95% of our students are graduating within 4 years. The other small percentage that are not graduating that time typically have a summer experience that allows them to be ready for their next stage in life.
That's so amazing because, again, they're leaving high school already ready to tackle college or already to tackle the work field. And I think that's half the battle, in a sense, when you leave high school, is that learning curve from going just from high school and, you're in this environment where you're watched, of course, you're supposed to be, but, like, you're watched and you're managed, and then you go to college and it's like sink or swim, you know?
Right.
So I think
Right.
that's so important. And we touched a little bit on this with all the different programs, but tell us what exactly sets United Charter High Schools apart from other schools in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens?
Yeah, I think one of the big pieces around our work is around our civic engagement approach. Our students, we believe, and obviously, as we stated before, preparing them for the next stage in life, but we also want them to be change makers, where they're empowered to like change things within either their school environment or the local environment where the schools are at. And what that actually looks like in real time is that throughout the course of their high school experience, they take various courses that help them to really get a good understanding of their local school environment through history, through economics, through some STEAM-related classes. And then in their senior year, there's somewhat of like a capstone project where the students basically present and try to address a problem by thinking about a strategic way to change that. And through that process, students earn a seal on their graduation certificate that essentially is a way to show that they basically have like reached this status of like figuring out a really challenging problem through this process. It's a really exciting way to kind of really empower students, but it also gives us an opportunity to really learn about different ways that we can do things. Like, for example, we recently had like community gardens that were created out of this. We recently had a redesign of several school-based structures through these projects. And we're even thinking about next year taking this to the next level and thinking about some national issues and encouraging our students to focus their projects around that.
That's so amazing to hear. You know, I was going to ask about the capstone later on in the interview because I know when I went to college, my final project was a capstone. And it's,
That's
you know,
great.
right. In the journalism sense, it was different. But I think it's so important now to give the students this hands-on work experience or this hands-on experience of problem solving and putting together a project like this. So just tell me, what is usually the feedback from the students when they do these projects?
Yeah, so we actually in the season right now where we're actually, students are presenting and completing their projects. Typically, what I love about it is that students have given a lot of good feedback about how this is like one of their first experience in doing public speaking in like a structured kind of way. They appreciate the feedback. We typically have guest speakers. I'm fortunate to be a guest speaker at a number of the schools through these experiences. Students also, they feel like this is kind of like a give back moment, because all of the students that are doing these projects are in their senior year. So they're not thinking about like this project being something that's going to impact their school experience. They're thinking about how this will ultimately support the underclassmen that are in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade throughout their high school experience. And they love the fact that they're kind of giving back to their school communities in that respect.
That's amazing. And now there's something that when I was reading and I was going over and I was doing some research for this, is I noticed is that there is a particular cell phone ban that your school did prior to New York State or New York City. Tell us a little bit about that. What drove that?
Yeah, well, several of our schools had a cell phone ban for many years. And what I noticed, I've been in the organization for almost going on 2 years, and one of our schools in particular did not have a cell phone ban. They allowed students to use their cell phones. And one of the visits that I did in the recent weeks, a couple of years ago when I first started, I realized in the student lounge area in between classes that there were just a number of students and that were in the lounge and their faces were glued on their cell phones. And then when I walked into classrooms in that same school, I also noticed that teachers were spending multiple times in the classrooms, they were just reminding students to put their cell phones away. And for me, I was just very concerned about the lack of engagement in the classroom, the kind of the issues that took away from student learning. And then, I also just thought about like my high school experience. And like cell phones weren't even a thing in my high school experience. But I thought about how I could potentially really make this experience a lot more richer for students, so that they can have like authentic opportunities to connect with one another. So we made a decision this year to do the ban across all 7 schools. The feedback has been extremely positive. What we're seeing from teachers is that teachers are being able to focus more on student learning. There's no time that is taken away from the actual instruction that's happening. We're also seeing that those same experiences in lounges and like the free time and lunch and even during recess, the students are connecting with one another. And that same lounge that I spoke about earlier, like I visited that lounge several months ago, and the students were engaging with each other, laughing, connecting with each other, and just having really authentic experiences.
That's so great to hear, because when I was in high school, this was right before TikTok came out and blown up and all of that. And when I was in high school, there was a cell phone problem. I was guilty of a cell phone problem myself. And so I think it's so important now, because especially now that we're in the age of technology and you really can do everything on your phone and at the tips of your fingers, but you are losing that social interaction. But I do have to ask, when it was initially proposed, did you get some pushback from the students, maybe from the parents?
For sure, we've had pushback from a number of our students. We're at the point now where students realize like this is just a part of their high school experience, majority of them. We have developed structures as well to address some of the parent concerns, because the biggest parent concern was like, if there's an emergency, how will I contact my child? So we developed structures across all of our schools where in the event of an emergency, we can literally get the phones back to students within minutes. And it obviously involves us involving almost all of the school staff to pull that off, but those structures are in place to ensure that that safety precaution is in place in the event of an emergency.
That's definitely what I was gonna ask, because it is a huge concern for parents, just with what's going on in schools sometimes, It is something that's needed. And again, I feel like there are times where schools will have an implementation of no cell phones, but then there's no procedure if in the case of an emergency. So I like the fact that it's like, hey, we're not going to give you your cell phones, you're not going to have your cell phones, but we will have something in place in the case of an emergency. And I think that's really important to have that as well. So just tell me, for families watching or who want to learn more or who want to enroll, where should they start? Well,
we definitely would be excited to have any family consider us as an option. Here in the Bronx, we have 4 schools. Our schools are under 2 different areas. One area for our school is called the United Charter High Schools for Advanced Math and Sciences, and then Math and Science, and then we have United Charter High School for Humanities. And I'd like to talk a little bit about 2 of our campuses. Any parent can go to unitedcharterhighschool.org and click on apply, and it will take you through a process to formally apply for one of the few opportunities that we have right now. You basically, the steps are clearly spelled out on our website, so we encourage families to go there. But I'd like to talk just about 2 particular areas. 2 of our schools, one of our schools in the Wakefield part of the Bronx, United Charter High School for Humanities, and another of our school that's in the Morrisania part of the Bronx, United Charter High School for Humanities 2. Those are excellent schools that provide the similar experience that you would have in United Charter High School for Advanced Math and Science, with a rigorous education, but they also offer amazing arts experiences as well. And we just encourage families to go to unitedcharterhighschool.org to formally apply.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with us this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For more information, you can visit the website at unitedcharter.org. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open right after this. Only 57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. "55% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend." "34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it." Discover what's possible. BronxNet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the BronxNet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit BronxNet.org to learn more.
"19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city, and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak, and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
Welcome back. Despite healthy lifestyles, cardiovascular disease remains the leading cause of death in the U.S. New research suggests inflammation plays a key role in heart health. A low-dose medication traditionally used for gout shows promise in reducing arterial plaque and potentially reversing heart disease. Here now is the cardiologist and program director at Harbor-UCLA Medical Center, Dr. Matthew Budoff. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on.
Of course. So to start things off, for our viewers who may not be 100% sure, can you tell us what exactly is inflammation and how does it contribute to the development of heart disease?
Yeah, so inflammation is the same thing we get when we get arthritis or joint pain. It's cells that aggravate the heart and can aggravate the different joints, but it can also aggravate the heart and the vessels in the heart. And when the vessels in the heart get aggravated, they can get more plaque buildup, and that plaque can break off and cause a heart attack or a stroke. So the inflammation in the heart is just as dangerous as, or just as destructive as inflammation in joints or other places.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so when it comes to the conversations about heart disease prevention, inflammation isn't something that is normally discussed. So can you tell us a little bit about how do you think that inflammation is overlooked in these mainstream conversations?
Yeah, we've been focusing so much on cholesterol, for example, blood pressure, and those are important. Diabetes control, people to quit smoking or to exercise more. And all of those are good cardiac interventions to make people live longer and healthier lives. But inflammation is now part of the discussion, or should be part of the discussion. And we need to think about people who have inflammation, and it's just a simple blood test to figure it out. But if you have inflammation that can be causing heart damage, there are now treatments available.
Once again, thank you for sharing. My next question was going to be, are there any particular tests you can get done to know that you have inflammation? So aside from a blood test, is there anything else that our viewers should know?
I think it's just asking your doctor. The blood test is called C-reactive protein, or CRP. It's a very simple blood test. It's very inexpensive. It's widely available. And it'll tell you if that's elevated. That would suggest that you have inflammation that could be causing damage to the arteries, and that maybe you should be considering other therapies.
And how exactly does inflammation differ from other commonly discussed risk factors like high blood pressure or high cholesterol?
Yeah, so, hopefully down the road, we'll be discussing this similarly or equally. But when we talk about cholesterol medications or cholesterol, we want to get the cholesterol down because cholesterol feeds the arteries. It causes the plaque buildup in those blood vessels. And that's really critically important for people to prevent. Blood pressure causes a lot of damage, not only to the heart, but to the kidneys, to the brain. Strokes are common in people whose blood pressure is uncontrolled. So we want to control the cholesterol and the blood pressure, but now we can also think about controlling the inflammation as kind of a third arm of prevention. You have to keep in mind that the number one cause of death for men and women in the United States is heart disease still. So more than all cancers combined, people are dying of heart disease, and we can now have another tool to help us prevent some of those deaths, hopefully.
That is such that's such a significant statistic when you put it that way. Out of all the cancers combined, and still heart disease remains to be number one. That when you look at those numbers, it really is astonishing. Now I'm reading here a little bit about an Ekstrom trial. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so what we did is we took patients and we took pictures of their heart with a CT scanner. We got how much plaque they had in their arteries, how much buildup of cholesterol and other things they had in the arteries. And then we put them on either colchicine, a low dose medication once a day, or placebo, no active therapy, and followed them for a year. And at the end of 1 year, we took another set of pictures of their heart to see if the plaque got better or worse or didn't change. What we found is that in those patients who were on the low dose colchicine, they had less plaque buildup than those patients who are on placebo or no active therapy. So we saw that colchicine added to other therapies helped slow down the plaque buildup in the arteries, and in some patients even induced regression. In other words, they had less plaque in their arteries than a year earlier.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And can you tell us what exactly makes this trial significant in the world of cardiovascular research? And how are you going to take this newfound information and implement it further?
Yeah, so we think that this adds to a growing body of literature that suggests that inflammation is not only bad for the arteries, but can be treated. For a long time, we just thought, oh, if you have inflammation, you have inflammation, and maybe take some Motrin or take some naproxen or some type of anti-inflammatory medicine and just try to quiet it. But now we know we can actively treat inflammation. And the same is true for active diseases such as lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. We now have drugs that are really good at targeting inflammation. So for the heart now, we have this medicine called colchicine. It's low dose. And the interesting thing is this drug has been around for decades because it's been used for other diseases like gout. Colchicine has been used for gout for decades. So we're now repurposing this therapy in a low dose once a day for patients to help prevent heart problems.
Thank you. And now let's talk about medications like statins and how do they compare to colchicine when it comes to reducing cardiovascular risk?
Yeah, so statins, we have two properties that at least we think are really important. One, they lower the cholesterol. Cholesterol is the building block for plaque buildup in the arteries, and many patients with high cholesterol can get their cholesterol lowered very effectively with statins. Statins also have a little bit of an effect on inflammation, so they actually have two different ways that they help prevent heart attacks, strokes, and cardiovascular death. Colchicine works on the inflammation side more, and it adds to the statin to give it more power. So you can take colchicine with or without a statin if you're not a believer in the statins, or if your doctor doesn't think you need a statin, but you have inflammation, we still have colchicine available as a good add-on therapy for you.
You're ahead of the game. My next question was going to be, can you take it on top of a statin? Can they work together? Or, what would that look like if you do take the two of them together? So once again, thank you for clarifying that. Now, can you tell us if there are any risks to taking colchicine on a daily basis?
Yeah, so this is very low dose, much lower dose than we use for other diseases like gout, like I mentioned earlier. But there is a little bit, some people do get a little bit of diarrhea. If you get that side effect, you stop the colchicine and it goes away within a day. So it's usually nothing too major, and there's no other major side effects that we see from colchicine. So it seems like a very safe and effective treatment.
And now, how might this discovery change the way doctors approach heart disease prevention going forward?
Well, yeah, so I think like now we're going to be, we have our what I used to call the ABCs. A is taking a low dose aspirin if you need it. B is blood pressure. C is cholesterol. Now we can also think about adding inflammation into that alphabet and seeing if we need to treat inflammation. And if so, we now have this new therapy or this old therapy that's being repurposed to help us in that battle against heart disease.
And also, what do the findings suggest about the future role of inflammation management in cardiology?
So I think the implications are going to be that they're going to make its way. It's already into some of our guidelines, how to practice cardiology, but I think it's going to be more widespread. I think we're going to start using this more routinely in patients who are not only high risk, but patients who've already had maybe a heart attack or a stroke, to try to prevent a second heart attack or a second stroke. And I think that's going to be where the next studies are going to be, hopefully, and where the development of incorporating the studies that I've done and many others have done to help move this field forward.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, for our viewers, especially those who believe they're doing everything right, what do you want them to take away from this study and from these new findings?
Yeah, I would just say that, check if you have inflammation. Next time you get a blood test, no rush. But if you're getting your cholesterol checked or your kidneys checked or something, and you're going for blood testing anyway, maybe see if your doctor can add on this C-reactive protein. And if you do have inflammation, just talk to your doctor about whether or not therapies would be appropriate to help reduce that inflammation so it doesn't cause more heart disease.
Thank you. And just one last question as we're coming up on the end of our segment. Is there a particular website that people can go to learn more about inflammation, colchicine, and the trial results?
Yeah, so we put everything on one website. It's called cvdinflammation.com. So all one word, cvdinflammation.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Doctor, for sitting down with us this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
What's up, creative family? Discover your voice with BronxNet community media classes. Are you ready to bring your ideas to life? At BronxNet, we offer television production classes for community members ages 18 and over, empowering you to share your vision with the world. Get certified in field production, in-studio production, and our new exciting addition, podcast production. Once certified, you can create your own show to air on one of our 6 TV channels. It all starts with our free Unleash Your Ideas Masterclass, designed to help you plan your show idea and set you up for success on your production journey. This class is offered at the beginning of each month for your convenience. Our dedicated BronxNet team is here to support, encourage, and uplift you every step of the way. Join us and become a part of the creative force that engages and inspires the Bronx community and beyond. Sign up today and start your media journey with BronxNet. Visit bronxnet.org/education to learn more and register. Let's create something amazing together.
We're gonna start the show right now. This is my favorite part. Ready in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey, this is Angel, and I am one of the instructors for the in-studio production. Here at BronxNet, we offer classes that can help you elevate, expand, and start your television career. All you have to do is sign up at bronxnet.org/education. For the past 7 years, I have been in various productions, spanning from talk shows, independent films, news reports, art displays, teachings, musical performances, and many more. Ain't that right, Angel? Yeah, you're absolutely right, Angel. There are a lot of creative individuals that we're just waiting to sign up for the class. And if I may, can I also express thank you, Angel. That's all the time we have left. Visit bronxnet.org/education and become a producer by taking the course. The class I offer is also in English, en español y también bilingüe. Nos vemos en la próxima clase.
Welcome back. This year alone, the United States has faced 27 major weather and climate disasters. each causing more than $1 billion in damages. Experts warn emergency preparedness is no longer optional. It's essential for everyone, no matter where you live. Yet, a recent survey shows that over a third of adults nationwide lack a solid communication strategy for themselves or their families during emergencies. Joining us now is the National Public Safety Strategist at T-Mobile, Craig Martinez. Craig, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brittany.
Of course. So let's get into why is it so important now more than ever for families to have an emergency communication plan in place?
You know, when you look at any of these events, whether they're planned or unplanned, we have to make sure, not only as a society, but as a family, we plan for the unexpected. You know, for instance, my family, I make sure they have all of the phone numbers that they may or may not need during a disaster. I mean, my 20-year-old daughter may not think she needs the number to the power or water department, but in an emergency, she might. The other thing we do as a family, make sure we have a go kit available that we can grab and hit the road really quickly that has all the important documents we might need: water, non-perishable food, flashlights, phone chargers, and things like that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And can you let us
Yeah.
know what are some of the most common mistakes people make when preparing for natural disasters like hurricanes, tornadoes, or wildfires?
Yeah, you know, connectivity is so vital, not only during disasters, but in our day to day. I mean, think how much we use not only our cell phone, but our Wi-Fi and our internet. So you've got to plan for some of those things, maybe having disruptions during emergencies, especially. You know, cellular networks can be overwhelmed during a disaster. And so if you still have power at your home and you want to make a phone call, try to use Wi-Fi calling. If you're unable to make a phone call, try sending a text that uses less data and may or may not get through on these networks. So you've always got to kind of plan for those things, as well as, you know, one thing that we utilized during Hurricanes Helene, Milton, and the LA wildfires was T-Satellite via Starlink. You know, that's text messages sent and received from here to, you know, satellites orbiting the Earth. And during those events, more than 500,000 text messages and 140 wireless alerts were actually sent and received.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so, when it comes to better preparing yourself for disasters before they strike, what are some steps that individuals can take?
Yeah, one thing you do want to make sure you do is on your settings on your cell phone, actually enable wireless emergency alerts. That's something that when those emergencies go out and sent out, you need to make sure that's turned on so you can receive them. Make sure your cell phones are always charged. Have a portable charging pack if you can, and if you don't have either of those, just make sure that you're using like battery saving or dark mode on your phone to extend the life of your battery in your phone. You know, and I've had more than you know, nearly 3 decades of military and law enforcement experience. You know, and police and fire departments are responding to around 200 million emergencies every year, or 911 calls, right? And a lot of times when we're in those situations or debriefing the aftermath, connectivity or communication is always at the forefront of our conversation. You know, and first responders use so many data intensive tools nowadays: drones, body worn cameras, smartphones, laptops, thermal imaging. All of these different tools they use require data connectivity. And that's where we've kind of stepped up and created T Priority, which is like a network slice given to first responder agencies during these times of need that will help with capacity. It will ensure, you know, faster 5G speeds with the highest priority level, and they're never deprioritized. And so this solution was built to fill that data gap during these emergencies.
That's amazing. And at the top of the interview,
Yeah.
you mentioned about the Go Pack that you have for your family. But for
Mhm.
families right now who have limited resources and who may not be able to grab everything at once or, go to the store and get everything that they need to put that together at once, what are
Yeah.
some steps that they can take with limited resources to create an effective emergency plan without spending a lot of money?
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, you look at what you have currently in your home right now. You know, I could put together a cache of devices or tools or food and water and things like that right now without having to go anywhere to the store. And so it's stuff that I already have in my home. But the thing that most families, you know, my family could be in this category as well in the past, was we don't prepare, we don't talk, we don't train. You know, law enforcement and fire departments across the country train every day for these these types of things, but do you do that at home? How many of us have even something as simple as a fire drill plan that we've worked out with our kids? To, if there's a fire in our home, what do we do? Where do we meet? How do you get in? How do you get out? So you always have to have these hard conversations about the what ifs. What if this is to happen or that? What are we going to do as a family to make sure that we're all safe?
Thank you for mentioning that. I do think that that is so important to do so, because I wanted to ask you, what role do local agencies play in helping their communities prepare? However, sometimes when it's a mass casualty or a mass disaster, they cannot get to everybody at that exact moment. So tell us a little bit about the role that local agencies play in this.
Yeah, for sure. So when these things happen, first responder agencies are always, my wife always knew during my 23 years of law enforcement experience that when something bad was going on or a disaster struck, that I was probably not going to be home because I was going to be at work and have to work, and mandatory shift coverings and things like that. And so one of the things that law enforcement and fire departments do is they try to plan for these, and when they do plan, they try to involve the community members. And so I would solicit you to reach out to your police and fire departments and ask what they're doing and how can you get involved. I mean, that ensures that you know what those first responder agencies are doing and how you can help, because a lot of times we can't do it all, and we depend on the community and those citizens around us to kind of help step in where we can. But the one thing we have to make sure that we're able to do is communicate, and always have that plan, have a redundant plan of, if this goes out, how do I communicate with this? Or if that goes out, how would I communicate with that?
Again, thank you for sharing. And now let's talk about in communication strategies. According to a recent T-Mobile study, 34% of U.S. adults don't have a communication plan. So what are some of the risks, and what can people do about it?
Yeah, so one of the things you need to do, regardless of what provider you're on, you need to make sure that you've got the most robust plan with the highest level of prioritization, especially our first responders on the individual side of the house. Because this solution in T priority is available to millions of first responders across the country now, individually, meaning, on their individual cellular plan, they can have T priority. So we can ensure that if they're at work or not during these events, that they'll have the needed connectivity that is so vital for them to be able to do their life-saving job.
Absolutely. And for our viewers, what resources would you recommend for people looking to build or improve their emergency preparedness plans?
Yeah, there's so many things out there, especially on the internet. When you look at FEMA's website, they have so many tools and links available, and best practices for you to utilize for your family to stay safe during these events that can be very, very devastating, as some of that we've seen. I mean, it's currently June 4th and the start of hurricane season is here. I know we've kind of felt with some of the recent weather that it might have started earlier, but hurricane season is here. So now is the best time to prepare for these events with you and your families.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up, can you tell us what is one key takeaway that you want our viewers to remember when it comes to staying safe and connected during a disaster?
One key thing, Brittany: preparation. Plan for the unexpected. That's my best advice.
Thank you so much again for sharing that. And Craig, thank you so much for sitting down with us today. This was a really, really informative subject and subject matter. So thank you for speaking with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Brittany.
For more information, you can visit their website at tmobile.com/business. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Open right after this.
19.7% of Bronxites currently experience food insecurity. Meanwhile, instead of these nice, colorful foods, this is the best food that they have access to. If this sounds like you, there are a bunch of resources to get healthy food for free or cheap. If you want to help, you might consider donating or volunteering in one of these places. Community fridges like this one are all over the city and allow New Yorkers to conveniently donate extra food to people who might need it. Go to this link and find your nearest one. Food banks and pop-up events like these provide millions of healthy meals to families in need. These organizations are distributing meals to Bronxites as we speak and are always accepting donations and volunteers.
Welcome back. Reckless e-bike, bike, and moped riders in New York City are facing increased enforcement of traffic regulations. To combat riders who disregard traffic laws like running red lights and ignoring stop signs, specialized officers will patrol high traffic areas citywide. In the Bronx, targeted enforcement will take place along key thoroughfares such as Fordham Road, 149th Street, and Tremont Avenue. Here to discuss more is the Bronx and Uptown organizer at the Transportation Alternatives, Anna Berlanga. Anna, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me here.
Of course, like I said, like I told you right before, I've almost been hit by a bike, a scooter, a moped, a time or 20, so I'm very excited to talk about this with you. Let's start off with what are the changes that the NYPD has made in enforcing bike traffic violations?
So this was it was a small change that has a huge impact. So for decades, bike infractions were dealt with like car infractions. You got a ticket that you could pay via mail. Now the change that they made, that the NYPD and Commissioner Tisch made by themselves, was to treat these as criminal summonses. So now it's a criminal infraction to do a small traffic violation.
I think that's very important. Like you said, it's a small change, but it makes a huge impact. And I think, you know, you don't always have to take these massive leaps and bounds, but it's the smaller things that are going to make people think about, you know, think before they violate a regulation. So with that, why are officers now giving criminal summonses instead of regular traffic tickets? We kind of just spoke about that, but can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I really can't speak to what the NYPD and Commissioner Tisch are doing. I'm here to say that I don't know that it's great to treat bicycles differently than treating cars when we know that cars cause a vast majority of the injuries and deaths on our roads.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you're able to share with us, what does a C summons mean for riders and how does it differ from a B summons?
So normally traffic, like I said earlier, oh my gosh, I'm getting like tripped up on my words.
No, you're totally
fine.
But
normally, traffic violations, it's just a ticket. So when you get pulled over in a car for a ticket, you mail in your money, pay it online, and you go about your day. So the criminal summons is you have to go to court, wherever the court is in the Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens. You have to lose a day of pay, you have to get a lawyer, and then you have a criminal record. So that criminal summons or the criminal record could have implications for your daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it makes you think before you violate. And so let's talk about the enforcement on areas like Fordham, 149th Street, and Tremont Avenue. Let's talk a little bit about that, maybe why those areas.
So Fordham is the second deadliest road in the city.
Wow.
Fordham, Tremont, and 149th have a lot of conflict. 149th, we've seen 3 cyclists die just on one corner alone, so 149th and Brook Avenue, for example. These are one of the only places in the Bronx where you can go east to west from river to river, so to speak. And so it's high conflict areas that aren't designed for every user in mind. The city has tried to redesign Tremont, has tried to redesign Fordham, but everybody wants to use the space. So we've got conflict with buses, cars, pedestrians, and cyclists. That's why they're targeting those areas.
Because of the influx of, you know, cars and scooters and all of that, essentially.
Yeah, I would say that they're just roads that aren't designed for everybody. So the city has tried to design them, like Fordham, some of the slowest, and Tremont, some of the slowest buses in the city. The majority of users on those roads are bus users, but the buses are going at 4 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so even something as simple as trying to get a dedicated bus lane is not working. And then you see all the double parked cars on those roads that aren't following the regulations and aren't getting ticketed either. It creates conflict.
Absolutely. And now tell me, what are the residents saying about this increased enforcement?
I think a lot of people are really scared and nervous. We have a delivery workforce of 100,000-ish cyclists. And like I said earlier, a criminal summons is different than a traffic violation ticket. So a criminal summons could have immigration implications because now you're in the criminal justice system,
right,
and that can trigger deportation. So people are scared.
Yeah, absolutely. And now let's talk a little bit about food delivery workers and other riders being unfairly affected by this policy. Tell me about that.
I think I just spoke a little bit to it. I think also what we're seeing is that there's a change in the landscape. So about 10 years ago, food delivery via bicycle started gaining popularity. But back then, delivery cyclists were employed by the restaurants themselves. So I don't know if you remember, but the city passed a law where the employee had to wear a high-vis vest, a helmet, have their bike with lights, and then on the vest, it had to have some identifying number. So if you were riding recklessly, the customer, somebody on the sidewalk, could call the restaurant and say, cyclist number 001 was riding recklessly. And then the restaurant could decide what to do with their employee. If they got too many complaints, the employee could be fired. This was a really effective strategy. It also shared the consequence between the cyclist and the restaurant. So there was shared accountability between the person that was making you do the deliveries really fast and the person that was doing the deliveries. Now we've shifted and our laws really haven't caught up. So now our food delivery goes through things like Grubhub, DoorDash, Uber Eats, and the cyclists are independent contractors. So they're not employees of these billion-dollar companies. And so the billion-dollar companies kind of just get off scot-free with how they're how they're making their delivery cyclist go. We've heard reports from some of the delivery cyclists that if they're stopped for 45 seconds, they get dinged by the app companies. So if you think about the cycle of a light, if they're stopped, then suddenly they get dinged.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Thank you for sharing that. And now let's talk a little bit about what concerns are, we spoke a little bit about what some of the concerns about this policy are. Let's talk about, in a sense, how do I phrase it? The concerns that the advocates are raising as well. What does that look like in the advocacy behind this?
I think everyone wants a safe street. We have noticed a change in landscape. I ride a regular bike, I ride an e-bike, I'm a transit girly, I love riding the train and getting to read my book. I think what we all recognize is we want just sound, sensible policy that makes sense for everyone. So if we look at our streets, even with all the improvements that we've made, are still designed primarily for cars. Right. So the light cycle, thinking just about the green lights are timed for a speed of 20 to 25 miles an hour. It's not designed for cyclists, or if you want to make a left turn, it's not designed for cyclists. And there are improvements being made, but they're just not there. A simple improvement for pedestrians, for example, is here in the Bronx, we've got these wide roads, thinking about the Grand Concourse or Tremont or Fordham. And I'm thinking about the grandmas and other vulnerable street users that are trying to cross that huge road. in the time allotted with the crosswalk, and it's simply impossible. So that's like a long way of saying everybody just wants a safe street, and that starts with how our streets are designed. And right now they're designed for cars, and so we want them to be designed for pedestrians, for cyclists, for the most vulnerable road users. And if we learn to share the road, then some of these conflicts can be avoided.
Absolutely. And is the city closing a loophole, or is this going too far?
I would say it's going too far. I
Okay.
would say that it's the NYPD is just going at it alone. I think they should involve all the different stakeholders, the DOT, NYPD, the city council. I'm looking at city council saying, yeah, we have a problem, but let's get together and make a solution that works for everybody, or at least most people, right? Maybe you won't get something that works for 100% of the people 100% of the time, but treating a 60-pound bicycle harsher than a 2,000-pound car, when we know that 250-ish people died last year with cars and 11 people died with all sorts of bicycles, e-bikes, acoustic bikes, and moped. That it doesn't make sense that the vehicle causing the least amount of harm is getting the harshest punishment.
Thank you for clarifying that, because at the top of the segment, I wasn't so sure on what exactly this meant. So I think through this, I definitely learned, like, okay, I definitely can see where you're coming from now. Now, in lieu of the harsher summons, what are some ways to keep the streets safe without ticketing them?
I mean, there are tickets available, right? Running a red light, you could get a ticket. One thing that we say is street design. So for pedestrians, something as simple as like raising some of the intersections makes cyclists and cars slow down when they approach an intersection, because it's like a speed bump. That's a really great street design. Having medians in the middle of like when you're trying to cross a big lane. So we've seen some of that improvement on the Grand Concourse, where there's a little pedestrian island in the middle of a really wide road, so the pedestrians can have more time to cross. That's another example of a really good street improvement. Wider lanes, so different speeds of vehicles can go. So like on my bike, I go 10 miles an hour, but like the City Bike e-bikes can go 15, 18 miles an hour. So having enough safe passing, that's another great street improvement.
Absolutely. Well, Anna, thank you so much for sitting down with us this morning and talking about this.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Of course. So for more information, you can visit their website at transalt.org. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast on Optimum Channel 67, Verizon Fios 2133, or watch anytime on the web at BronxNet.org. This wraps up this episode for us. I'm Brittany Skyler. Make sure to keep this channel wide open. See you soon.